How could I go without talking about Spider-Man, the animated series? This was an animated TV show that started in 1994, back when I was like 5 years old. And watching it as a kid, I loved it. And this introduced me to Spider-Man. This gave me all of the information, just everything I knew about the character, his villains, his relationships. I mean, I credit this show for a lot of my Spider-Man knowledge. Unfortunately, the show was on for 5 seasons, but I can't buy it anywhere on DVD, at least in the US. So all I could buy was a series of like 5 DVDs that have random episodes of this series. And I'm going to start with the Ultimate Villain Showdown. It's only 4 episodes of, I guess, just some of the random villains that Spider-Man's had to face. It starts off with a 2-part episode where he's fighting Dr. Octopus. And you see a lot of the character relationships, like J. Jonah Jameson, how he hates Spider-Man and he's constantly putting bad articles in the Daily Bugle about how bad Spider-Man is, how he's a menace to society. And Peter Parker, who works there and is Spider-Man, he's seeing this and he's feeling really down on himself. He's like, crap, I'm trying to save the city. I'm trying to do what's right and what's best, but I'm constantly getting bashed for it. I'd like to see him upset over that. And there's even a moment where he gets fan mail. And sure, that's nice, but at the time he's like, I don't need to be reading this crap. This fan mail, he ends up going to this little girl who wanted to meet him. And this was how they set up his origin. He tells this little girl, through flashbacks, the origin of how Peter Parker was bit by the spider, just everything that we know and love about Spider-Man's origin. And I thought it was a cool way to do his origin through flashbacks instead of just having it happen in chronological order. And there's an awkward moment where after Peter gets bit by the spider, he passes out, and you don't know it at the time, but he's dreaming. He's dreaming that he turned into an actual spider. He's in his house with Aunt May, and Aunt May thinks he's a spider, so she flushes him down the sink. He wakes up at the harbor, and he's a giant-sized spider. But his head is his normal Peter Parker head. Like, it's so weird. I mean, yes, I do love this show, but I do admit they did some weird stuff with it. You also see how Spider-Man, he started off as more of a celebrity, kind of, or at least he was a wrestler. He was on these talk shows. He was making money. But when he let this robber pass by him, and then he killed Uncle Ben, Spider-Man said, okay, now I know what I have to do. Now, seeing him deal with Doc Ock, you see him get captured and brainwashed, actually, by Dr. Octopus, and he gets turned into a villain, which was interesting. I mean, I'm not saying I loved the idea, but I thought it was interesting, the fact that this little girl had to be the one to save him. I'm like, okay, I see what they're going for. It was awkward, though. You had this Jamaican cab driver. Like, her accent was so strong and, dare I say, annoying. This felt so stereotypical and so just over the top, and I'm like, really, guys? We meet this character, Madam Web, who I remember when I watched this as a kid, I thought she was so weird and so creepy. Because she is. She has these mysterious, mystical powers, and she always pops up out of nowhere, surrounded with smoke in these dark alleys to corner Spider-Man. And yeah, she teaches him this nice lesson that helps him out, but it's always just creepy, this lady. Next episode, we get the origin of the Green Goblin, which I really enjoyed. You see Norman Osborn, who's working on these experiments, research, and obviously a freak accident, he becomes the Green Goblin. But I loved how the episode played it up as to where we didn't know who this Green Goblin character was. In fact, the Hobgoblin came first, according to this series, at least in this continuity. The Hobgoblin was first, so everyone was wondering, okay, who's the second Goblin? And since people thought that Norman Osborn died in that accident, Spider-Man at least thought that this was Harry, who just kind of lost his shit. And I thought the mystery of that was really interesting until, of course, you see it's Norman Osborn and the fact that he was kidnapping every one of his enemies, like even Kingpin, Felicia Hardy, just a bunch of people. Mary Jane, I think he kidnapped, just people who he felt like did him wrong. Speaking of Felicia Hardy, the next episode, we see her get saved by Spider-Man, so she develops a big crush on him. Now, I like that relationship, but I also like the fact that when Peter Parker tries to take advantage of that and asks Felicia out, she goes, "I'm not really interested in you. I'm talking to someone else." And not Spider-Man. Even he goes, "Wow, I'm competing with myself? Really?" Now, honestly, that was the only interesting thing about that episode because the majority of it was about this young teenager who got into trouble a while ago, but then gets put back into trouble, and he's going back and forth on whether he should be a villain. Spider-Man has to talk him out of it. I get that it's, especially for a kid's show, you do want an episode like that where it's like, hey, we want to teach a moral lesson on not to go on this dark path for kids. So I totally get it. It's just, it really wasn't that interesting to watch. Honestly, if it wasn't for Felicia Hardy and Spider-Man's little relationship, then the episode probably wouldn't have even been on this disc. Now, those episodes were cool to watch, especially reminiscing on my childhood a little bit. But the special features are, if you don't want the episodes, like if you don't care about that, the special features, the interview with Stan Lee alone is worth it. I mean, it's just Stan Lee talking for I don't know how many minutes, but he's just going on about how he created Spider-Man, about everything that went into that, and the ideas and how he relates to the character himself, where he pulled this material from. He even goes through each villain and how he created that person, the name and the abilities. Some of the stories I have heard before, but honestly, I could listen to Stan Lee talk all day. That's how interesting this guy is. So guys, I will be back to talk about more episodes as I go through these DVDs one by one, but let me know in the comments below, have you seen the Ultimate Villain Showdown? And why not? Let me know what you think of the Spider-Man animated series in general. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Later!